Today we're going to do something different. Today, we're going to play a game only suitable for the most attentive. If you're a real NBA fan and you proudly say you know basketball, maybe and only maybe you'll be able to answer this question. What do the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, and the Phoenix Suns have in common? Yeah, the truth is that there are many possible answers. For example, all three teams are clear title contenders this season. In fact, they're three of the four bookmakers' favorites, with only the Denver Nuggets missing from the list. But the answer we're looking for is a little deeper. Many of you have come to the conclusion that these three franchises have made very significant trades this offseason. And that answer gets a little closer to what we're looking for. The reality is that the Celtics, the Suns, and the Bucks just traded away their best defensive player. Literally. There's no better way to look at how the NBA is changing than to notice the trades being made by the teams that are among the league's elite. And in this case, the conclusions are pretty simple to draw. The Milwaukee Bucks have traded away, according to the players themselves, the best perimeter defender in the NBA in exchange for an offensive juggernaut, top 75 all-time player Damian Lillard. The Celtics have traded the Defensive Player of the Year from just 2 seasons ago in exchange for another player with a huge offensive arsenal in Kristaps Porzingis. And the Phoenix Suns have traded their entire defensive core of Bridges, Johnson, CP3, and Ayton for 2 of the most prolific offensive juggernauts in the NBA today in Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal over the last half year. But we can go further back in time to observe how the Dallas Mavericks sent their best defender, Dorian Finney-Smith, as part of a package to get Kyrie Irving, or how the Philadelphia 76ers traded their best defender, Ben Simmons, in exchange for a player of completely opposite skills like James Harden. Bottom line, NBA GMs believe that building is much harder than destroying. Throughout the history of the league, there have been teams that have achieved wins during the regular season and playoffs through defense. The Detroit Pistons of the Bad Boys era in the late 80s, the other Detroit Pistons Bad Boys of the 2000s, Marc Gasol's Memphis Grizzlies, or Derrick Rose's Chicago Bulls are some examples. However, as of today, there's no team with that defensive mentality that bases its game solely on grinding their opponent's offense down. In a way, the current trend indicates that team GMs prioritize elite offensive players over elite defensive players, because at the end of the day, they're much harder to replace.
Pushing it. Finding Giannis. Captain.
And to demonstrate this fact, it takes nothing more than looking at salaries. Tony Allen, one of the best perimeter defenders of the last decades, managed to pocket $41 million during his 14 seasons in the NBA, a salary equivalent to what prime Kobe Bryant earned in 18 months. Or the example of Bruce Bowen, who pocketed $30 million during his entire career in the league, an amount equivalent to what D'Angelo Russell earned per season with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Defensive specialists are much cheaper players, and they can also come to teams as a complement to trades or as a late draft pick. And this makes their market value not so high. But there is another side of the coin. In the NBA, there is a fact. It's very difficult to reach the final stages of the playoffs if your team does not have one of the best defenses in the league. And the incredible thing is that the league's increased pace and offensive explosion over the last decade has not turned the tide. This tradition has remained unshakable, and the coaches have always felt it necessary to have a team with great defensive power, until now. Of the last 22 NBA champions, only 2 of them have not had a defense that would have ranked in the top 10 for the season. One is the Golden State Warriors of the 2017-2018 season, and the other is the Denver Nuggets, who just hoisted the Larry O'Brien. 2 franchises that, coincidentally, have been 2 of the best offensive systems in NBA history. In fact, the Colorado team had the defense ranked 15th last season, the lowest ranking by any NBA champion since 2001. But as we've seen in other videos on the channel, Denver's case is a complete anomaly. For starters, many people are unaware even to this day of how incredibly dominant Nikola Jokic is, a player who's owned 3 of the top 5 seasons in NBA history in BPM. For more on this, tune into our Nikola Jokic video. The Joker's proven to be able to elevate the play of all of his teammates, so copying this offensive system can be very costly for squads that don't have as much talent on their roster.
13 left in the half, that's a deep one, oh!
But they have. The Nuggets won the ring with the 15th best defense in the competition. And now we're at the point where we can't know if that milestone has been a one-time thing or a hole in the system that only one team has been able to exploit so far. But the good news is that we'll soon find out, because the Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Phoenix Suns have copied the same strategy. Of the four favorites, only the Boston Celtics have been able to come out of the offseason defensively reinforced, and that's been thanks to the last trade that the franchise made, in which Brad Stevens acquired the services of Drew Holiday. But the truth is that despite losing 3 defensive players in Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, and Robert Williams, the Celtics have managed to add the former Bucks point guard and Porzingis, and have been able to keep Derek White and Al Horford. But this has not been for nothing. Boston, Phoenix, and Milwaukee have been able to bolster their arsenal at the cost of losing much of their depth. All of these teams have been forced to offer most of the quality of their bench in order to elevate the talent of the starting 5 offensively. Denver, for its part, has suffered the effects of the new CBA in terms of renewing some of its key players, which has also led to a decrease in the talent of its rotation. One more factor that unites these teams, but not the last, because do you know what else all of these teams have in common? Like the Nuggets for the past year, they don't have a traditional point guard. The Nuggets won the championship playing with Jamal Murray at point guard, a combo guard adapted to the position who always prioritizes scoring over playmaking.
In this fourth, here's Murray behind the back. Jokic, too pretty.
And if we think about it, who's going to play point guard on these teams? In the case of the Celtics, it'll undoubtedly be Drew Holiday, a player who's always been a good facilitator, but who's occupied the shooting guard position for part of his career. In the case of the Suns, it'll be Devin Booker, another shooting guard who's adapting to the point guard position and who offers a very similar profile to Jamal Murray. And finally, the Bucks will use Damian Lillard, traditionally considered a point guard because of his size, but with a style of play that's also more reminiscent of a shooting guard. Ladies and gentlemen, the NBA, as we used to know it, may have died. The era of teams trying to emulate the Golden State Warriors or Houston Rockets offensive system of a few seasons ago, where the offense was based on the three-point shot, is becoming outdated. GMs have turned their attention to another type of blueprint, which can offer a different angle for coaches to build their game. The influence of the Denver Nuggets, loaded with offensive talent and a unique system of play which has brought back the mid-range thanks to the incredible two-man game of Jamal and Jokic, are beginning to take over the throne of league trends. But one thing to keep in mind, the fact that several top teams adopt a similar playing philosophy is obviously no coincidence. Basketball is one of the most statistically measurable sports. Numbers allow you to evaluate players from various points of view, and teams invest a lot of money in on-field professionals that allow them to draw certain conclusions. In short, my point is that these operations have been measured to the millimeter by different general managers, and the fact that this trend will be the norm from now on is more than calculated. However, even if all the favorites have tried to maximize their efficiency based on trades, this doesn't ensure that their performance will be satisfactory. The defense, by tradition, has won championships. Not only is there a risk that these franchises will suffer against teams with other, more defensive philosophies, but there's only one Nikola Jokic. There's only one player in the entire history of the league who's managed to make a purely offensive team work against elite opponents. And as we've said, it's an absolute anomaly that seems unrepeatable. But this season, several franchises have managed to put together good poker hands, and it's their time to go all in.